Yeah. All right, let's call the Public Works and Utilities Committee for September 8th, 2020 to order. Can we have a roll call, please, Ms. Pisula?
Chairman Christopher Rivera,
I'm here.
Councilor Romana Beta,
Here.
Councilor Joanne Vijo Koppler,
Here.
Councilor Michael Garcia,
Present.
Councilor Signe Lindell.
Here.
You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Pisula. Approval of the agenda. Any changes from staff? Mr. Romero?
No changes, Mr. Chair.
How about from you, Mr. Jones?
There are no changes, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right, what are the wishes of the committee?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion for approval of the agenda from Councilor Vigil Koppler, second from Councilor Lindell. Any further discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call, please, Ms. Pisula?
Chairman Christopher Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Romana Beta,
Yes.
Councilor Joanne Vijo Koppler,
Yes.
Councilor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Councilor Signe Lindell.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you. Next, approval of the consent agenda. So Councilor Vigil Koppler, I have that you have pulled items B as in boy, C as in car, D as in David. Is there anything else besides those?
Mr. Chair, that was D as in dog.
Yes.
I'm kidding. Yes, that's it.
Okay. Is there anything anyone else would like to pull off? I don't see anyone's hands up or see anybody comment. So what are the wishes of the committee?
Move to approve as amended.
Second.
Motion for approval as amended with from Councilor Vigil Koppler, a second from Councilor Lindell. Could we have a roll call vote, Ms. Pisula?
Chairman Christopher Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Romana Beta,
Yes.
Councilor Joanne Vijo Koppler,
Yes.
Councilor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Councilor Signe Lindell.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you, Ms. Pisula. Next, approval of the minutes from August 24th. Any changes from staff? Mr. Romero?
No changes, Mr. Chair.
Anything, Mr. Jones?
No changes, Mr. Chair.
Any changes from the committee?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion for approval from Councilor Lindell, a second from Councilor Vigil Koppler for the minutes. Any further discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote, Ms. Pisula?
Chairman Christopher Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Romana Beta,
Yes.
Councilor Joanne Vijo Koppler,
Yes.
Councilor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Councilor Signe Lindell.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Now we're on to public comment. Anything from your side, Ms. Pisula?
Mr. Chair, Linda McAllister is on. She doesn't have a comment on a particular item. She just wants to comment on the condition and maintenance of her road.
Okay, we can give her 2 minutes to do that. Are you able to let her on?
I unmuted
Okay.
her, Counselor.
Hi.
Linda, you're on.
Okay, hi, my name's Linda McAllister and I'm here to explain my concern about my street. I live on Acequia Borada in Las Acequias in Phase 4. I've been talking to Regina since last summer about my concerns of the street. And I've also sent pictures to her, walked them over to her, been talking to her, as well as I sent some pictures to some of the counselors and whoever I was told by Jamie to send to. with some pictures of my road. The road, I guess, is bad enough, what I understand, that it needs to be resurfaced. We have about 6-inch wide cracks with weeds up to 2 feet tall, running across the streets. I understand that the main reason that the side streets aren't on the top of the list is because the main streets get more activity, which I totally understand that. But I was just wondering if you guys could consider giving a percentage to residential. I think John, I haven't talked to him yet, but is already on that issue. So I'm just here to kind of voice my concern. And I just think that a little bit of percentage from the main roads to our area, my street, won't solve the residential streets, but I think just a little bit of the percentage of whatever monies you get may help us gain some movement on the restructure of our residential streets. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. McAllister. Unfortunately, we can't have a question and answer session.
Oh,
but we did.
Okay, that's okay. I just
Yeah.
thought I could raise my concern in the meeting, and then I don't know.
Thank
That's
you. We did hear
Okay.
you, and we did.
Did you guys, did it make sense?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
All right, thank you, guys.
All right. Anything else, Ms. Pisola?
No, Mr. Chair.
How about from you, Ms. Ray Diaz?
Mr. Chair, I didn't receive any public comment.
Very good. Thank you. We're on to item B. Oh, I'm sorry. We're on to presentation. So placement of City of Santa Fe water meters on domestic wells. Jesse Roach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm going to share my presentation here.
Jesse, just to be fair, I'm going to hold you to the 10 minutes that you said, so as close as possible.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to start with some visuals here on the wells in the area. I'm going to view. Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So this map just shows wells in Santa Fe through the years, 1950. Oh, it's not moving. Oh, okay, 1960, 1970, 80, 90, 2000, 2010, and 2017. And so I'm going to just now sort of talk through this memo. And this informational item is just to give an update on what one of the things that we're doing in the water division in relationship to wells in the area that are not City of Santa Fe wells. So there are on the order of 4,000 groundwater wells in the river basin. And the city has 7 production wells. And we do have a large, we have a large amount of a right. We have 3,500 acre feet per year that we can withdraw from the aquifer. We estimate that the other wells in the area probably withdraw around 2,000 acre feet of groundwater. So this groundwater reserve is something that we are sort of interested in understanding as well as we can. It's an important part of our drought reserve. And so one of the things that we do is that within the city limits, nobody can drill a new well, a domestic well, unless they're further than 300 feet away from an existing city water line, or it would be more expensive for the property owner to connect to city water than to drill a well. So this is sort of one of the restrictions that we have in place to try and serve use in the city with city water rather than drilling more wells. In addition, when we agree to allow a well to be drilled within the city limits, the well owner must agree to several conditions, which includes installing a meter on the well. This is actually a state engineer requirement, and providing access to the well by city staff for reading the meter, sampling for water quality, or measuring the depth of water. So in addition to putting a well in, we also want access essentially to what we can learn from that well about the local aquifer. But as probably everyone on the call is aware, in the past several years, we have moved away from meters that are read sort of manually every month to meters that automatically record use. So in almost a real-time basis. And what we would like to do now is to take that technology and move it to meters that are already required on new domestic wells, so that we can also track the use of those domestic wells. I think this sort of helps us close the gap between an intent of the rules that water use would be reported and the ability to sort of have real-time access to that information. So as of last July, we have begun to require the use of these meters on newer replacement wells as a condition of approval. And we provide the meters to the well owner. We maintain ownership of the meter, but we do provide the meter, and we pay for the cost of the automatic meter reading. And in exchange, we receive that data on groundwater use. The reason that I'm bringing this to the committee, other than sort of an update, is that there's potential interpretation of this within the context of anti-donation, the anti-donation clause. So as I mentioned, we do provide the meter for use by the well owner, but we maintain ownership over that meter. But we do pay the data collection fee so that we can have these meters automatically read. In exchange for that information, well, let's see. So we do not view this as a donation to a private party because we're receiving valuable consideration in the form of information about real-time groundwater use at particular locations within the city that we would not otherwise be able to obtain. And so this information feeds into a larger data set that we use to better understand and manage the local aquifer. So the overall, we feel that the benefit to the public is a better understanding of our aquifer, and for that we're willing to pay the fees associated with gathering that data. So that's the extent of what I wanted to present, and just wanted to make sure that the committee understands that we are providing our meters for use on domestic wells within the city limits, and we're paying the fees associated with reading those meters in exchange for information that provides to us on local groundwater pumping at these wells. So with that, I would stand for any questions that the committee might have.
Thank you, Jesse. Any questions from committee members? Councilor Vihil Coppler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jesse, how are you going to treat the wells in the kind of the no man's annexation land between the city and the county by, I guess they're bordered somewhere around Paseo Nopal down toward South Meadows? There's a whole strip of land that some of those residents don't really know if they're in or out. So, and in fact, I know of one well being drilled like right now. So do we have a handle about how you're going to handle metering those wells?
Mr. Chair, Councilor Vihil Coppler, if they're not in the city limits, then we don't have the ability to I don't know for sure. I would guess that they would still be required to have a meter and required to report their use annually to the state engineer, but we would not have direct access to that information.
I guess that's my point, because they are in the city, but it's a piece of annexation that the city and the county haven't really finalized, but it's like half finalized. I'm not really sure. But in fact, the city inspector was at that well today. So it is city, but it's sort of no man's land kinda right now. And so I just wanted to, maybe I'm just sort of alerting you that there are wells there in that quasi-annexed land that you should keep your eye on, because there's a good portion of them, because Paseo Paul and all through there is quite rural. And I'm sure probably almost everybody has a well there. And so it is city property, as evidenced by the fact that the land use person went out there today. I mean, and it's not on a bad thing. It's just there's recognition that that is city annexed land. But it's not quite final in other respects.
And is that the area sort of in this donut hole that you're talking about between 599 and city limits?
Yeah, I guess so. Is Paseo Nopal in there somewhere? Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so yeah, that's the area I'm talking about. Just don't forget about that donut hole. So
Okay.
that's just kind of an alert. And then the second thing is how will you treat the wells up Bishop's Lodge or somewhere in there that are covered by the Amet case? Now, how will that work?
Well, again, I think because that's outside of city limits, we won't have any jurisdiction over what happens there.
No, there's a portion of it that is in city limits. That's already been determined. And some of those residences are covered within Amet, and they do have wells. So would we have, they have an opportunity if the community water system being built by the Pueblos extends that far up Bishop's Lodge Road, they have an opportunity to either keep their well or connect to that water system. But meanwhile, they can still keep their well. So, and it's in city limits. So I'm not sure how you will treat that piece of strip.
I'm not aware of is that, I guess I didn't realize that any of those wells were within city limits.
Some of them are, a very few. Kind of, it's goes up, up to Suke, and then it kind of starts on into Bishop's Lodge Road, but then it ends. And Amet does stretch that far. So I guess maybe I'm just saying, be aware of that, because that's where you have jurisdictional overlaps. Because it'll still be within the city limits, but that water system, that's going to be probably after my lifetime, but it is still planned.
Okay, thank you. I'll put that on my radar. My understanding is that the area of city limits that is outside of the Santa Fe watershed is this area north, and the name of this area is escaping me at the moment. But I'm not aware of, well, it looks like there are a couple wells. So thank you for pointing that out. I'll look into it.
Yeah, just be sure it's on your radar, because it's better to be forewarned about stuff. And then I have a question. The state engineer's office makes you get a well meter. And if you're going to put your city meter, then will a well potentially have 2 meters? And how will that work?
We would provide a city meter, and then they wouldn't need to have another meter. So the city meter is in lieu of the meter that they're required to get by the state, or it covers that requirement.
Well, if they already have of course, if they already have a well and they already have the state engineer required meter, will you just install another one, or does the state engineer's meter, would that give you what you need and not have to install a meter?
Thanks for asking the question. I realized I didn't clarify that this would only be for new wells within the city limits or replacement wells within the city limits. So if there's already a well within the city limits that has a meter and has an obligation to provide those meter readings to the state engineer each year, we won't go in and replace that meter until they do some work to deepen that well. And so we're only talking about adding this technology to new wells that come online within city limits.
Well, it seems like wells are now harder to get from the state engineer's office, permits for wells. So will just doing new wells or replacement wells give you the information you're seeking? Is that enough data?
Well, it's a good start. We would love to have data. We would love to have the water use of all the wells and the water levels at all the wells. That would help us understand the aquifer better. But this is where we're starting, is to just start gathering information on new wells and replacement wells as they go in.
Oh, and will that give you the information that you need at all? Or I mean,
it will give us some of the
wells
information.
on your sheet. I mean, there's a ton of wells, and that all those wells have data that potentially is collected. So it seems sort of like a pin in a haystack to just get new wells, because they're hardly going to be granted. I mean, it seems they're getting harder and harder to get, I guess I'm saying.
It's a good point, and it's a good question, and I think this is sort of a first foray of ours into this, and I believe it may be possible for us to set up partnerships with landowners where we might be able to trade, say, sampling at a well, if they were to be willing to exchange the meter that they have on their well for a city meter that we would read automatically. There may be a set of well owners that's willing to sort of be part of this program. We can't force our way in on existing wells, but we may try and develop some programs that give some incentives so that we can gather more information on some of the wells that already exist.
And what do these meters cost? I guess I lost track of.
That's a good question. Mr. Jones, do you have a notion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Councilor Viral, Bill Koppler. A regular 5/8 inch meter, even a 3/4 inch meter, these applications run about $200 for the meter and register.
Well, then maybe it's good. We're not going to get too many. All right, those are all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilor Lindell, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Couple of questions about this. What's the penalty for overusage?
I don't know that. I apologize. I don't know the answer to that. It's not a penalty that the city would be involved in. That would be something at the state engineer level.
Okay, maybe we need to find that out. And what would the penalty be for dismantling one of these meters?
Mr. Chair, Councilor Lindell, we have not. I will have to investigate what we do about damage to our meters. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. How many wells did you say were within the city? 4,000?
4,000 was the number within the entire Santa Fe watershed. Let me find the number. So about 2,000 are within the greater city limits. And so the greater city limits does include that donut hole that we were talking about. And another 1,200 in the La Cienega area.
Okay. I think what we know is that doesn't the state engineer require that all wells be metered because they have a maximum draw on them every year?
Yes.
And it is probably something we also know that the vast majority of these meters are not, or of these wells are not metered at all.
I don't know the numbers on how many have meters. I do believe that the requirement for reporting to the state engineer is not enforced.
Right. So it's discouraging. I don't know really. I think Councilor Vihil-Coppler is absolutely right. There's probably very few new wells drilled within the city limits. There may be some that are replacement wells that are drilled every year, but I'll bet we know how many new wells were drilled in the city last year and how many replacement wells were drilled last year.
I would guess that it's less than 10 because I sort of know that we started this program and we've only installed a couple, maybe 4 or 5 meters.
Yeah, I'm not sure really why we're doing this. I don't think that this on 10 wells a year really gives us data that would give us any kind of statistical significance. So I think it's a nice project. I think it's a great idea, but I don't think that it gives us real data that is particularly useful to us, considering that we have, maybe 2,000 wells within the city and maybe 1,000 of them don't have any meter on them whatsoever. And they can be drawing as much water as they're inclined to draw because no one puts any enforcement on them. So I'm not really convinced that this program gives us any real benefit. I mean, it doesn't cost us a lot of money, but I'm just not sure what we think we're really going to get out of it. That's all I have, Chair.
Thank you. Councilor Garcia or Abeyta, any questions?
No, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
None on my end, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right, Jesse. So, based on or going back to what Councilor Lindell said, what are the benefits of starting this program? It's not expensive, but really, what do we really hope to gain?
Mr. Chair, I think we start to get a sense of what's the magnitude of withdrawal occurring at some of these wells. If we have a handful, if we have a sample in different areas around the city, we can see, what is the value of that information and whether it is worth us trying to incentivize other well owners to provide that information or to allow us to install those meters. So I think maybe it's best thought of as a pilot project, and we see how many wells we end up with meters on and what that information looks like and what the value of that information is, and decide whether to continue the program or invest more resources in expanding it or not.
So if we decided to annex the donut hole, the Kai Nopal area, which is what we had agreed to initially, but we put some brakes on that, how many additional wells would that add?
Mr. Chair, the total was 2,000, including that area, and I believe there's a table. I think I can get that answer for you in this table in the. So the number of wells, non-city wells within city limits is 1368. This is a few years old, so and the number of wells within the donut hole and including Agua Fria is an additional 400.
And that's including the traditional village?
Correct.
Okay. All right, so that's, I'm not saying we want to go there. I'm just saying that's something else to consider. So Councilor Lindell, you had a follow-up question?
Yeah, I just don't see how we can come up with any kind of statistical significance from monitoring 10 wells out of this number. It would never, I mean, I just statistically, I don't know what usage this data would be. I can't, I mean, I'm not an expert in statistics, but I've taken a few hours in it, and I don't know how we come up with any usable data from 10 wells when we're talking about, well, 4,000. And with the added steep slope that the state engineer doesn't seem to have any interest in any kind of enforcement on any of these wells. So I think this is, I don't know. I just don't see why we're putting the effort into this without having a very, very clear purpose for data that I just can't fathom that it's really useful.
So,
if you can tell me that I'm wrong on this, I'd be happy to be wrong about it.
Well, let me offer a way to think about it is that without these meters and without this data, we are maybe saying you can have a well if you're further than 300 feet from a water line, and we don't really care how much you use. And with these meters and with this, with the, the registers, we're saying you can have a well if you're too far away from our water lines, but we do know what you will use.
Well, let me ask this. Wouldn't it just be a lot easier to require that people hook up to our water system rather than drilling a well? That would make much more sense to me than this is really a long way around the barn to get to the same place. And it's really not on us. I mean, what are we going to do if someone uses more water than what the state engineer allows them to do? I don't think we have a penalty for it. Do we?
We haven't worked out a formal process that we would go through, but I believe just having the meter and the data being fed to us would be a deterrent. And we could pass that information along to the state engineer. But I don't think we want to get into the domestic well enforcement business, but I do think this helps us send a message that we are concerned about our aquifer, and this is one way that we sort of keep tabs on it. We do require anyone who's within 300 feet of a water line to connect to our water and not drill a well.
Thank you, Chair.
All right, any other questions?
Mr. Chair, I have a follow-up.
Go ahead, Councilor Vihel Coppler.
Jesse, are you just going to be collecting data, or are you going to be doing any testing of the well water?
Mr. Chair, Councilor Vihel-Coppler, for this particular project, we're just going to be collecting data. But as I mentioned, we do have the right to go sample wells that have been put in recently enough that we sort of included that as one of the you know, rights that we have. And so when there are water quality issues of concern, we will go out and sample specific wells, and that'll be targeted based on location.
So getting back to, the sampling and such, even if you don't have a whole bunch of meters, because there aren't a lot of new wells, if you do sampling and you find that there could be something wrong with the water, I think that would be a great benefit, not only to the city knowing, but also to the resident who has the well. And it also might be just kind of an enticement for someone to say, yes, we want the meter, because maybe they would eventually get some testing out of it, or ask the city to test their well if their water's not tasting right or something. But that was my question. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jesse, for the presentation. So are you already doing this? You're just letting us know that there may be some issues with the anti-donation information. Is this stuff that's already happening?
This is, yes, we have started doing this in the last year, and there's starting to be a few wells out there with our meters and our registers reading their use. So I wanted to bring it to the attention of the committee.
Well, keep us up to date on how that's going then. Maybe another follow-up presentation, maybe 6 months or a year, whatever you think is appropriate, and let us know how that program's working.
Okay.
All right. The next thing, item B, same thing from Jesse, a presentation on BDD shared pool agreement.
Okay, thank you. This initiative, I want to sort of put in the context of 3 different things that are happening now. Currently, to this point, have been sort of at a staff level between the county and the city, and now they're getting close enough to sort of, we're mature enough that we're ready to bring them to a policy maker level. One of them is a planning process, and I will bring an informational item to the committee maybe in 2 weeks, or the next time the committee meets, that talks about this sort of long range water resources planning effort that we are initiating, and that the county is going to be a partner in with us. And the second one is what I'm going to show tonight, which is what we're calling the BDD shared pool agreement. This is a tentative agreement at a staff level at this point. And then the third piece is related to city and county cooperation on the return flow pipeline, which is one of our sort of big initiatives for moving towards a resilient water future. So this piece fits into, and I guess the other sort of context I would give to that is that I think that the BDD shared pool agreement, as I sort of lay it out and explain it here, is of more benefit to the county than it is to the city. And that within the context of these 3 different agreements, that the return flow pipeline agreement would be of more benefit to the city than to the county. So although these are sort of standalone agreements, and they should be able to stand alone based on their own merits, I just wanted to provide the context within which this agreement has been developed. This can get pretty complicated, and one of my staff members today told me that he found the memo very difficult, and he, I think, helped me think about this stuff. So that's just to say, please stop me. I'm probably too far into the trees and I can't see the forest. So stop me with questions as I work through this. I guess two of the main pieces of information I want to bring out here is that the city and the county were co-owners of the Buckman direct diversion water treatment plant. And the nature of the resources that we use there are different. The city, we rely on what we call the San Juan Chama water that came from the Colorado River under the Continental Divide. The county has some San Juan Chama water, but the majority of the water rights that they have to use at the BDD are native water. We have the ability to store San Juan Chama water both in Heron when it first gets into our side of the divide and in Abiquiu, and the county does not have storage for their native water rights. So there are a couple of advantages of sharing these water resources to the city. Generally, we are glad that we have San Juan Chama water and we have storage for it. That gives us the operational flexibility that we would like. But there are some cases where being able to use county water, native water at one point in the year and then not at another point in the year and pay it back later is of advantage to the city. And so the two that I'm calling out here are some operational flexibility. So we as the city are the project manager for the BDD. And right now, if we decided, boy, we think that overall we could save money in the system if we shut down BDD for a month. That wouldn't be an option right now because the county needs that water. The county is a partner and that's their only water source available to them unless they pay the city for backup water. So that is one advantage that this BDD shared pool, which I'll lay out for you, provides to the city. The other advantage is, and this is really getting into the weeds, but there's times where reservoir operations at Abiquiu may require that only native water is released from Abiquiu. And during those times, we actually, even if we have plenty of San Juan Chama water, we can't get it from Abiquiu down to the diversion point. But almost by definition, in those situations, there's a lot of native water available. So if we can use native water during those periods of time and then pay that back to the county later, that's of an advantage. Now, to be fair, the management at BDD has already figured a way around this, and as of this year is operating sort of under what's called and optimized water rights accounting, where as long as BDD is on, they'll use whichever water is more available in one time of the year and then use the other water in another time of the year. And so, for example, this year, there was a lot of native water early and then almost no native water late. So we utilized almost exclusively native water early, and now we're using only San Juan Chama water. Now that mechanism is already in place. And so that advantage we sort of already have, and the BDD shared pool really extends that to periods of time when BDD is not online. So those are the two sort of advantages, operational flexibility and when we can't move San Juan Chama water. The advantages to the county of being able to share these water resources are the ability to have the city use native water when it's available and then allow the county to use San Juan Chama water when it's not, is effectively providing a way for the county to store some of their water. They don't have storage in reservoirs, but in this sort of through this operation, they can store that water in effect. And it also, and this is the big one for them, it provides an additional backup water supply. So if we can come to an agreement by which we utilize native water, county water when it's there, but allow that credit to carry through years, and that's essentially what the BDD shared pool is proposing to do, then the county can extend their sort of backup water supply. So the water resources agreement between the city and the county promises that the city will provide up to 1,350 acre feet per year of backup water supply. The BDD shared pool would extend this by at least 500 acre feet if they had built up that amount of credit prior to needing it. So that's a large benefit to the county. Okay, so I would like to lay out just a few of the terms of this agreement, and this may be way down in the weeds, so I'll kind of go over it at a high level and then be happy to take questions on specific details. But essentially, when county water is diverted at BDD but used by the city, the county will receive credit for some amount of that water. They don't get credit for all of it because water is lost during the process, regardless of what water we're using. But then they can build that pool. They can build the shared pool when the city uses county water at BDD. And then that pool can be drawn down in two different ways. And only when BDD is off, that's when this pool gets drawn down. That can be drawn down during an unplanned shutdown. And so this is of huge advantage to the county because when BDD goes off, they have to rely on the city for water. So this essentially allows them to utilize some of their native water when BDD's on in order to get through unplanned shutdowns. These don't happen very often for long periods of time, but fire or really bad water quality in the Rio Grande, or this year we expect it may in the next couple months, the river may drop to the point where BDD needs to shut down. So this is an advantage to the county, and it would be drawn down during that unplanned shutdown. The advantage to the city would be during a planned shutdown if there are operational efficiencies that can be gained, and sort of then the city could decide, okay, we're going to shut down BDD for 2 weeks or a month, and then deliver other water to the county, which will draw down this BDD shared pool. There are some limits that have been applied to it, both in terms of the rate at which that water can be delivered and how much can be built up. And then if there's a total volume limit that if in any given year we'll pump too much groundwater, essentially, we will limit that delivery to about 500 acre feet. Important to point out that the agreement is set up so that either party can cancel it within 60 days, with 60 days of written notice. So it's not a permanent agreement. I will point out the potential, I think, disadvantage to the city of the shared pool is that it allows the county to store their native water in a sense when they have a surplus and then call on that when BDD is down. And this is a hard scenario to imagine, but if BDD were to go down for an entire year and we didn't have much surface water in the watershed, we would end up in a position where we're relying entirely on our wells and also to provide backup water to the county. So the shared pool extends this potential added backup demand from 1,350 to 1,850 in a year where we're limited on local surface water. This is something that we can handle right now, but it's something that we would probably need to revisit, every few years at the least. So that was a lot. I'd be happy to explain anything in more detail from this proposed agreement between the city and the county.
Thank you, Jesse. Any questions from council members? I don't have everybody on my screen, so I don't see any hands up. Jesse, when I assume any agreement will have to come before the governing body?
Mr. Chair, that's correct. And the county is planning to take this agreement, this proposed agreement, to the Board of County Commissioners at the end of this month. And so my intent would be to bring this through committee, through the committee process, probably also towards the end of this month, but then hold off on taking it through council until it has passed BCC.
Okay. Anything from committee members? See nothing. Thank you, Jesse. We look forward to that coming before the governing body. So appreciate the presentation and the heads up.
Thank you very much.
Next, we're on to the consent agenda. First thing was item B, request for approval of capital reallocation budget amendment. Councilor Vihil Coppler, you pull this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't really get it from reading all this. The request is to reallocate 6,500,500 wait, 6,500,000 plus. And so where, I try to study the chart, but I mean the data, and then I know, Regina, you sent something out. Where is this money being reallocated to?
Mr. Chair, Councilor Vihil Coppler, the $6.5 million is being reallocated to those capitalizable items, the most recent list of which Regina just sent. The 6.5 million came from some project adjustments we did several months ago. The primary, some of it was eliminating some projects that didn't absolutely need to be done. Some of the money got scraped from projects that were done, leftover money. The bulk of the money came from us deciding to delay fire station number 2. So again, when I first brought it forward, the idea was to go over what it was intended for, adjust that, see how much we could shake loose. Now that we shook loose at 6.5, this is what we want it to go towards.
Okay, so now I've got Regina's chart pulled up. So, and then it says the total is your 6.5 million. So am I to assume that it's, I didn't take the time to add it all up, although I added up the yellow highlights and that didn't make any sense. So are all these projects where that 6.5 million is going? And what's the significance of the yellow highlights?
It is. So all of this is where it's going to. The yellow highlights is some adjustments that were made at Finance Committee, and then another adjustment we made between Finance Committee and Public Works Committee. Initially, we had, I think it was about $2 million here under roof repair. We don't think it's going to be that expensive. So at Finance Committee, a couple of things came up. One is in order to implement the public radio project, they need an extra $200,000 to complete the purchase of radios needed for that system. We also talked through the course of ICIP of legislative requests, the need for the Harrison Road sidewalk and lighting project. And the idea came up to use this instead of requesting legislative money. For what the main reason being is that this money is available now as opposed to us having to wait a year to execute legislative money. So these two adjustments, adding these two came at Finance. This one down here for the multimodal transition plan, that we present, Regina just emailed to you now. So that's one adjustment between Finance and now. It's an additional 225,000. So these 3 new projects were removed from the dollar amount from the roof project that was initially submitted to Finance.
So tell me, tomorrow, I don't know how widespread these meetings are, but there's like District 4 meeting tomorrow. How does that weigh in on this?
So again, this is different than the ICIP. This, with the exception of Harrison Road sidewalk and lighting project. Well, and even not that one. So that one was considered to have a regional purpose because of our regional homeless shelter and the effects it has on the surrounding area. Everything else is just citywide type of improvements that we need to take care of, primarily maintaining and or upgrading existing city infrastructure for the most part. Like for instance, we have some dump trucks that we need to replace under streets, asphalt trailer that needs to be replaced. There's a elevator repair that needs to be done in one of the parking lots, roof repair, purchasing signal equipment so that we can maintain our signals throughout the city, that type of stuff. It wasn't for specific projects per se.
Okay, and I totally agree with the Harrison Road sidewalk and lighting, definitely. So that's good. Does that mean that'll happen sooner than later?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Councilor Vihil-Coppler. So during the course of the ICIP discussion, of the $400,000, we had received $228,000 of legislative funds. The $400,000 was our estimate, our planning estimate. So this $172,000 arguably fully funds the project. We are in the process of design. We'll get a better number once we get the design and the right-of-way needs and all that type of stuff nailed down. But this $172,000 made that project whole from our initial estimate.
Okay. All right. Well, those are my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? I don't see any. So what are the wishes of the committee?
Move to approve.
Second.
A motion for approval by Councilor Lindell, a second by Councilor Vihil-Coppler. Could we have a roll call, please, Ms. Pisola?
Chairman Christopher Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Ramon Abeyta,
Yes.
Councilor Joanne Vihil-Coppler,
Yes.
Councilor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Councilor Sidney Lindell.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Ms. Pisola. Next, we're on to item C, which is approval of maintenance agreement for roadway lighting on New Mexico 599 and the US 84-285 interchange. Councilor Vihil-Coppler, you pull this as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, this is the project on the north side, right, of 599? I just want to make sure I'm in the right place.
The main purpose of that project is it's actually on the south side of 599. So if you're coming on 599 into town and you're wanting to merge onto 84-285, otherwise called St. Francis, to come into town down the hill, this will help extend that merge lane where now it's non-existent. You kind of have to merge directly into traffic. They're looking to improve that by extending that merge lane.
Isn't that the north side then? That 285, I can't even really always know where the heck it is because it's everywhere. But that's the north side of 599, right? Is that what you're talking about? Getting onto St. Francis Drive?
It's the south side, I think, the south side of 599. So 599, north of 599 is Tano Road, south of 599 is Alamo.
Oh, I'm just talking about 599 in general. It's the north exit.
Oh, the north end. It's the end of 599 where it terminates at 84-285. Yes.
Okay, so I just had that make sure I was in the right place. What I'm seeing is Are these going to be streetlights that they're installing? Is that what this is?
It's primarily going to be streetlights that they're relocating. What they're looking to do, so there's streetlights in the area of where they merge. And what they're doing right now, as the ramp itself is a long sweeping ramp, they're going to tighten it up a little bit. So that way it provides more real estate for them to make an acceleration lane. And so it's primarily replacing what lights are out there.
Okay, so because I guess my reason for pulling this off is I don't think that we have a real good handle all the time on streetlights. Number one, who owns them? Number two, who's responsible for maintaining them? Number three, well, kind of maintenance related, is who puts a new light bulb in, because light bulbs go off and on. And I'm just thinking, okay, the city is going to take some responsibility here, but can we really, how successful can we be, in really maintaining these? And it's that is a tough merge. It's a real tough merge. And I think it's great that hopefully the lights will help that. And if there's, a longer acceleration lane to get onto towards St. Francis Drive, that'll be very helpful. But, I'm just, here we go, taking on a responsibility, which we, in this memo, we have to, because that's our responsibility. Can we be successful at maintaining this intersection? Because, but merge, because, there's an accident there and the city hasn't maintained the light bulbs. It's the city that's going to be on the hook for a lawsuit. So I just, we need to just be real sure about being able to take on, even though it is our responsibility, but maybe ramp up, so to speak, that we can keep this intersection lit and going. That depends on budget and it depends on employees being able to get there and fix bulbs, but what, go ahead.
So Mr. Chair, Councilors, it's a very good point. It is very confusing regarding what lights are owned and whatnot. We have some that are owned by the DOT, some that are owned by the city, some that are owned by P&M, some are metered, some are unmetered. So there is a very a semi-complicated dynamic with all of our lights. These ones in particular currently are owned by the DOT, but since they're metered, the city, that we have to maintain them. P&M won't touch them. And so what's being proposed and the proposed lighting agreement doesn't change that. For the longer term, and I hate to say long, it should be forthcoming here. So the short term right now, we're just trying to execute this lighting agreement so they can keep that project moving forward. Hold on one second. Okay. So anyway, yes, grab. But so what we're working to do now, and so it's on our to-do list, and we've been chipping at things little by little. So now that capital reappropriation is a major thing, because now we can get our guys doing what they need to do throughout the year. One of the next things we're looking to do is do an LED upgrade of all of our streetlights. We're working with a vendor that currently does work in Albuquerque. And so we're hoping to get a contract put together to present to you guys. The idea is they will be using, they will be upgrading all of the lights in the city, at least city-owned lights, to LED. And the cost savings that we'll realize from that would be able to not only fund the LED upgrade, but fund this company's ability to maintain these lights on our behalf, which really cleans up a lot of things. So they'll be able to maintain all the city lights that we have to maintain and all the city lights that P&M helps us maintain, that big group of lights. And so I really think that's not only going to clean things up a bit, but it's going to definitely help with our responsiveness, help us to be a lot more proactive in making sure our lights are burning at all times.
Okay, well, I did hear that that may be coming, and I'm glad to hear that it's still on radar and hopefully sooner than later. But that's a good, I think that's a really good solution. And with this intersection, that kind of will help as well. I'm thinking.
I'm sorry, Councilor Vihel-Coppler, you broke out there for a little bit. So were you done with questions?
No, thank you very much.
All right. Any other questions from council members? See no other hands up. So what are the wishes of the committee?
Move to approve.
Second.
Second.
A motion for approval from Councilor Vihel-Coppler, a second from Councilor Beta. Any further discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote, please, Ms. Pissola?
Chairman Christopher Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Romana Beta,
Yes.
Councilor Joanne Vihel-Coppler,
Yes.
Councilor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Councilor Signe Lindell.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We're on to item D. I won't read the whole thing, but it's an ordinance amending section 23-6.2 to extend the time period for which establishments that have obtained an obstruction permit from the city and a temporary change expansion of liquor license premises. Councilor Vihel-Coppler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not against this, but I had some questions. I'm curious that if this is extended, so it'll go into next summer, what will happen when we have Fiesta? Like, I'm just concerned about, my question is mostly surrounding the plaza use and the streets thereof where the restaurants are now. What will happen when we have the arts and crafts and the Fiesta comes back, and so when all the streets are being used, will these restaurants still be operating and using portions of the street?
Mr. Chair, Councilor Vihel-Coppler, I don't think we've really determined that yet. We probably would work with Parks to see if there's a way that we could maintain the restaurant use. There's only the two of them, or perhaps minimize it a little bit. But that's a good question. It's not one that we have discussed at this point.
Because at least sometimes when things are good, you know, people do go down and they walk the streets in Fiesta and all around, and I think, and then they're competing with the food booths. So I'm just trying to, you know, kind of say, hey, this is something that would need to be worked out. Now, I did read the ordinance changes, but it doesn't say anything about that, and I just wouldn't want there to be any scuttle, you know, because I'm not sure how it works for Fiesta. Do we rent out the plaza? I'm not sure how that works, but you know, maybe the Fiesta organization has rights to the street during that time. I don't know. And same with the, you know, Indian market and girls. Oh, I'm sure Indian market, I don't know how that's going to work, but all of those events, the Girls Club Arts and Crafts Fair and all those things we have, I can't imagine that we wouldn't create a bottleneck somewhere there by, you know, doing that. So it's just sort of a forewarning about considering those measures.
Mr. Chair, Councilor Vihel-Coppler, what my intent was to do, at least with the obstruction permit, was for the time being extending it to December 31st. What this ordinance, of course, allows us to extend it further, but for now to December 31st. And then once January comes around, we can regroup with the not only the applicants, but with our programs and work with the person that permits, our special event permitter, to make sure we have some of these tentative dates down so we can inform them of that. We'll definitely put a caveat on the extension, whether it's now or say in January, not only which dates that we're planning for that they'll have to remove their items, potentially, but the fact that it may come up, once if we see something that we maybe missed, they may have to remove it. I think what we'll do, we'll definitely work with our special events coordinator, who's definitely a lot more familiar with the different events, and we'll look to see what things can stay in place and what things have to leave. There may be a combination of that occurring.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. Then the next thing I saw here, the FIR says yada, yada, and then it says eligible establishments that are currently taking advantage. So does that mean only those who are currently taking advantage of this can be extended? And I'm assuming this applies to the whole city, right, still. So I don't know who else is doing it, but it does limit this FIR. I know it's not the ordinance, but it does limit this advantage of an extension to eligible establishments that are currently taking advantage of, this measure. Is that the intent?
Chair, Councilor Vihil-Coppler, no, I think the FIR was trying to suggest that there'd be no additional fees coming in from current recipients of the people who currently have a obstruction permit. Those would be extended without an additional fee. But any new applicant could of course come in and be a part of it, but then they'd have to pay the fee. It's because the FIR was referring to the fee as opposed to it was trying to deal with the financial aspect of it.
Okay, well, that's good because I just didn't want to be short-sighted and not allow new people, new restaurants to, now with COVID, maybe they would be slightly more advantageous rules and new restaurants may want to jump on board. And I wouldn't want there to be limitations to the extension of the deadline. Okay, all right. Those are all the questions I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from other committee members?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion for approval by Council Lindell, a second by Councilor Vihil-Coppler. Any further discussion? We have a roll call vote, please, Ms. Pisola.
Chairman Christopher Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Roman Abeyta,
Yes.
Councilor Joanne Vihil-Coppler,
Yes.
Councilor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Councilor Signe Lindell.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Ms. Pisola. Now we're on to matters from staff. Anything, Mr. Romero?
Yeah, so one quick thing. As of today, I'm effectively not acting Public Works Department Director anymore. So I'll be passing it over to Regina. I'm sure the next few weeks, there'll still be some transition. I'll still be helping out with different things that I've been managing during that time. But Regina will be back as the city's Public Works Director. I would like to thank you guys for your help through this. Working especially through all the committees and council, but especially this committee has been very easy for me because you guys made it easy. We've had a lot of stuff on our plate, and I think the fact that you guys have been so flexible with what we've presented and how I've presented stuff, I really do appreciate that.
Thanks, John. I'd like to thank you as well for stepping up, stepping in, and really having a real seamless transition. So you did a great job. You should be proud of yourself. So Regina, you have a good person in the staff that can step in and handle it any time. So you should feel good about that.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Yeah, I'd love to add a couple words of thanks. John did an extraordinary job. If you think about it, he actually led the Public Works Department through the whole budget process, through the whole COVID process, through the being essential workers in the face of the pandemic and never skipping a beat. Really extraordinary leadership. John has an incredible ability to lead people as well as to solve technical problems, knows the city well, and just really can't thank you enough, John, for your contribution and your partnership. it's always a real honor on a daily basis to work with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wheeler. And thanks again, John. Any matters from or anything from you, Mr. Jones?
I have nothing, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Matters from the committee. Councilwoman Vihel Coppler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too would like to thank John. He's getting very good at this because he's had a lot of experience being Public Works Director many times. And it's always a pleasure to work with him. I know we funnel a lot of our constituent concerns to him, and he always responds, and it may only be 2 or 3 sentences, but we get the point. And that's always appreciated. The other matter I have, Mr. Chair, is I'm really concerned about sidewalks around the city, and we do get a lot of complaints about sidewalks and just sort of disappearing. All of a sudden you're in a neighborhood and the sidewalk is no longer there. So that's going to be, just kind of a prelude to District 4 matters tomorrow. And that is that District 4, I know we are missing quite a few sections of sidewalks. And although I don't even know if it's in District 4, but a big complaint that keeps coming up round and round is the missing sidewalk in front of the Lexus dealership on Sirius Road. We do get a lot of comments about that, and most recently a big one about that. So John, I'll be trying to work with you to see how we can come up with some solutions to that. And I know Councilor Harris, while he was on the council, we both had real concerns, and certainly put in for sidewalk continuation for miles. That's another area, big area. So I just want to mention that we need to do something like that, because I see it as a violation of ADA, American with Disabilities Act. We do have many elderly people who like to walk or even push their wheelchairs and they can't do that in a lot of sections of our city, including people who don't keep their bushes and foliage off the sidewalks. There's areas where you can't even cross the sidewalks. Maneuver the sidewalks because there's all that foliage in the way. So those are things that are of big concern to me. And so, John, I'll be certainly working with you in the future on that. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Anything else from committee members? I don't see any hands up, so we'll move on to matters from the chair. I have nothing except for our next meeting is Tuesday, September 29th. So we have some time between now and the next meeting, so enjoy the time. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you all for a great meeting.
Sheesh. Short and sweet, huh?